Hello, English readers, and welcome to our new live read along, our September live read along at Leaders Book Club. I'm Lydie Bureau, and I'm an English teacher in France. I'm also the founder of Leaders Book Club, in which I host live readings of adaptations of classics of literature and contemporary novels. I also tend to prioritize books that are written by women. Each month, we read and explore a different book for all levels of English. And at the end of each week, we meet with the members of the book club in a live workshop via Zoom to discuss the chapters read over the week. And this month, we are reading the B2 adaptation of Rebecca, the B2 upper intermediate. If you're not sure what B2 means, it's upper intermediate level of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And this is the 2008 Penguin Readers edition. So you can see that it's not the usual cover that I have used before of Penguin Readers books. You can see that it's an old version, and that's the back. So I was glad to find an adaptation of Rebecca, and this is B2 level. So you have to be an intermediate level to have an intermediate level in English. So it's not really suitable for really beginners. So if you want to know more about Daphne du Maurier and her work and this novel, to know more about what is happening in this novel, then I invite you to listen to the podcast episode 24, an introduction to Daphne du Maurier and Rebecca. And this podcast is available on my YouTube channel and also on my Spotify podcast, Read in English. I know that some people might be interested in listening to podcasts more than watching on YouTube. So that's why I like to have the content on both platforms. So today, it is the first live reading session of Rebecca, and we are going to read chapters 1 and 2. And this Saturday, I will host the first live workshop on the chapters that covers chapters 1 to 6. Okay, so the chapters that we're going to read this week. So if you want to attend this live session, make sure you subscribe to the book club, and you can find all the information and dates about the dates on upcoming live readings or live workshop by clicking in the link in the description of this video. And if you're live, you just go on my website after this live reading, of course. So you can find all this information, and all the live readings are going to be on replay as well on my YouTube channel and on the Spotify podcast. And finally, I'm pleased to announce that you can now purchase the 3-part live workshop of Our Wives Under the Sea, which was our August live read along. It was we read this book in its original text, so that's for advanced learner of English. Okay, so C1 minimum. It was quite a complex plot and a lot of technical vocabulary around the ocean and marine life and all around sea creatures. So if you have a very good level in English, then I invite you to listen to our workshop that you can and listen to the discussions that we had around this book. And once you purchase this workshop, you don't it's just a one-off payment, and you don't need to be a member of the book club. You just buy the workshop and read the book as well, and listen to the conversation. That can be something interesting for you if you want to know what we discussed, and we'll give you an idea of what it's like to be part of Leaders Book Club. Um, and once you purchase, you're going to create your login and you have a private access to the videos and you can watch it in your own pace whenever you want. So again, you will find the link in the description of this video on YouTube and Spotify as well, if you're listening. So now let's get started. Okay. Up. So in this book, I'm going to show you a little bit inside. So here, the first page, you have here the content. So there are 10 chapters. And here you have a little bit of an introduction of the book, which can give you a lot of information around the context of the story. So you have here a little summary of the novel, and here and the rest, you have quite a lot of information. That's quite nice to get the context and learn more about Rebecca, Daphne du Maurier, sorry, the author of the book. So you have here quite a lot of information, and that can help you understanding better, help you understand better the novel before starting to dive in. So I hope that you have listened to the podcast episode 24 that I've done, that I've published, that I've posted recently, because this way you have an idea of what the story is like. But maybe you don't like to know more, to know in advance. So it's going to be a discovery, up to you, really. But I'm not going to do a summary of the story. I'm going to start straight away the reading of the chapters. So we're going to start with chapter 1. And it's entitled Maxim de Winter. Okay, let's go. Last night, this is a famous quote, as I talked about in my podcast on introducing Daphne du Maurier and Rebecca. Last night, I dreamed I went to Manderley again. It seemed to me that I was passing through the iron gates that led to the driveway. The driveway is the little road that goes to, that it's private, and that goes up to the front door of the house. Okay. The drive was just a narrow track now, its stony surface covered with grass and weeds. Sometimes, when I thought I had lost it, it would appear again beneath a fallen tree or beyond a muddy pool formed by the winter rains. The trees had thrown out new low branches which stretched across my way. I came to the house suddenly and stood there with my heart beating fast and tears filling my eyes. There was Manderley, our Manderley, secret and silent, as it had always been, the grey stone shining in the moonlight of my dream. So Manderley, remember, is the name of the house that you can see here. So it has a big part in the story. The house is almost like one of the main characters. Time could not spoil the beauty of those walls, nor of the place itself, as it lay like a jewel in the hollow of my hand. The grass sloped down towards the sea, which was a sheet of silver lying calm under the moon, like a lake undisturbed by wind or storm. I turned again to the house, and I saw that the garden had run wild, just as the woods had done. So it feels like the garden has been abandoned. Weeds were everywhere, but moonlight can play strange tricks with the imagination, even with a dreamer's imagination. As I stood there, I could swear that the house was not an empty shell, but lived and breathed as it had lived before. Light came from the windows, the curtains blew softly in the night air, and there, in the library, the door stood half open as we had left it, with my handkerchief on the table beside the bowl of autumn flowers. So it feels very much like nothing has changed in the house. It felt like they all the things that they left there were still there when they come back, maybe months or years later. So almost as if it was a photograph of the place, and it didn't change, and nothing had changed when they got back. Then a cloud came over the moon, like a dark hand across a face. The memories left me. I looked again at an empty shell, with no whisper of the past about its staring walls. Our fear and suffering were gone now. When I thought about Manderley in my walking hours, I would not be bitter. I would think of it as it might have been, if I could have lived there without fear. I would remember the rose garden in summer and the birds that sang there, tea under the trees, and the sound of the sea coming up to us from the shore below. I would think of the flowers blown from the bushes and the happy valley. So remember, this house is set in, well, the story is set in Cornwall. So make your research if you don't know what Cornwall looks like. It's in the southwest of England, and it's by the shore, and that's why she talks about the sea. Okay. These things could never lose their freshness. There were memories that could not hurt. All this I knew in my dream, because, like most sleepers, I knew that I dreamed. In reality, I lay far away in a foreign land and would wake before long in my lonely little hotel bedroom. I would lie for a moment, stretch myself, and turn, confused by that burning sun, that hard, clean sky, so different from the soft moonlight of my dream. The day would lie before us both, long, long, no doubt, but full of certain peace, a calm we had not known before. We would not talk of Manderley. I would not tell my dream, for Manderley was ours no longer. Manderley was no more. So they do not live in that place again. So she dreams about Manderley almost as if it feels like she's there when we read the first paragraphs here at the beginning of the chapter. And it feels like instead she is in a warm place somewhere away, somewhere else than in England, yeah, and another country probably in a hotel room. So what happened? We can never go back again. That is certain. The past is still too close to us, but we have no secrets from each other now. Everything is shared. Our little hotel may be dull, and the food not very good. Day after day, things may be very much the same. But dullness is better than fear. We live now very much by habit, and I have become very good at reading out loud what I'm doing, actually, reading out loud. Um, the only time I have known him show im the only time I have known him show impatience is when the postman is delayed and we have to wait for our post from England. I have lost my old self-consciousness. I am very different from that lost I am very different from that person who drove to Manderley for the first time, hopeful and eager, filled with the desire to please. It was my lack of confidence, of course, that struck people like Mrs. Danvers. What must I what must I have seemed like? What must I have seemed like after Rebecca? I can see myself now, so long ago, with my short, straight hair and young and unpowdered face, dressed in a boldly fitting coat and skirt, following Mrs. Van Hoper into the hotel for lunch. She would go to her usual table in the corner, near the window, and looking to left and right, would say, "Not a single well-known face. I shall tell the manager. He must make a reduction on my bill. What does he think I come here for? To look at the waiters?" We ate in silence, as Mrs. Van Hooper liked to think about nothing but her food. Then I saw the table next to ours, which had been empty for 3 days, was to be used once more. The head waiter was showing the new arrival to his place. Mrs. Van Hooper put down her fork and stared. So stared, she looked for a long time. She was insisting. She looked with insistence. Then she leaned over the table to me, her small eyes bright with excitement, her voice a little too loud. "It's Max de Winter," she said, "the man who owns Manderley. You've heard of it? Of course. He looks ill, doesn't he? They say he hasn't been the same since his wife's death. The papers were full of it, of course. They say he never talks about it, never mentions her name. She was drowned, you know, in the bay near Manderley. Her interest in other people was like a disease. I can see her as though it were yesterday, on that unforgettable afternoon, wondering how to make her attack. Suddenly, she turned to me. "Go upstairs quickly and find that letter from my brother's son, the one with the photograph. Bring it down to me immediately." I saw then that she made her plan. I wished I had the courage to warn the stranger, but when I returned, I saw that she had not waited. She was already sitting beside him. He gave her the letter without a word. He rose to his feet immediately. Mr. De Winter is having coffee with us. Go and ask the waiter for another cup," she said, just carelessly enough to warn him what I was. So she doesn't even introduce her to Mr. De Winter. Well, the narrator, we don't know who she is. Her expression showed that I was young and unimportant, and that there was no need to include me in the conversation. So it was a surprise when he remained standing and made a sign to the waiter. "I'm afraid I must disagree," he said to her. "You're both having coffee with me, And before I knew what had happened, before I knew what had happened, he was sitting on my usual chair, and I was beside Mrs. Van Hooper. For a moment, she looked annoyed. Then she leaned forward, holding the letter. You know, I recognized you as soon as you walked in, she said. And I thought, why is there Mr. De Winter, Billy's friend? I simply must show him the photographs of Billy and his wife. And here they are, bathing at Palm Beach. Billy, Billy is mad about her. He hadn't met her, of course, when he gave that party where I saw you. Sorry, and here they are, bathing at Palm Beach. Billy is mad about her. He hadn't met her, of course, when he gave that party where I saw you first. But I don't expect you to remember an old woman like me. Yes, I remember you very well. Sorry, she was still. Uh, Okay, yeah, it was still her talking. Yes, I remember you very well, he said. I don't think I should care for Palm Beach. That sort of thing has never amused me. Mrs. Van Hooper gave her fat laugh. If Billy had a home like Manderley, he wouldn't want to play around in Palm Beach, she said. She paused, expecting him to smile, but he went on smoking, looking just a little disturbed. I've seen pictures of it, of course, she said, and it looks perfectly beautiful. I remember Billy telling me it was lovelier than any other house of its size and age. I'm surprised you can even bear to leave it. So you see how mentally the house has so much valued, and how in the place has so much meaning for the characters. His silence was painful, as anyone else would have noticed, but she continued. You Englishmen are all the same about your homes, her voice becoming louder. You don't want to seem proud of them. Isn't there a great hall at Manderley with some very valuable pictures? I think he realized my discomfort. He leaned forward in his chair and spoke to me, his voice gentle, asking if I would have some more coffee. And when I shook my head, I felt that his eyes were still resting on me, wondering. What brings you here? Mrs. Van Hooper went on. You're not one of the regular visitors. What are your plans? I haven't made up my mind, he said. I came away in rather a hurry. His words, his own words, must have raised the memory, for he looked disturbed again. She talked on, still not noticing. Of course, you miss Manderley. The West Country must be lovely in the spring. Yes, he said shortly. Manderley was looking its best. In the end, it was a waiter who gave him his opportunity, with a message from Mrs. Van Hooper. He got up immediately, pushing back his chair. Don't let me keep you, he said. It's so nice to have met you like this, Mr. De Winter. I hope I shall see you some Sorry. I hope I shall see you something of you. You must come and have a drink sometime. I have one or two people coming in tomorrow evening. Why not join us? I turned away so that I did not have to watch him search for an excuse. I'm so sorry, he said. Tomorrow I'm probably driving to Sospel. I'm not sure when I shall get back. Looking a little annoyed, she left it, and he went. The next morning, Mrs. Van Hooper woke with a sore throat and a rather High temperature. The doctor told her to stay in bed. I left her quite happy after the arrival of a nurse and went down early for lunch, a good half hour before our usual time. I expected the room to be empty, and it was, except for the table next to ours. I was not prepared for this. I thought he had gone to Sospel. I was halfway across the room before I saw him and could not go back. This was a situation for which I was not trained. I wished I was older, different. I went to our table, looking straight ahead, but as soon as I sat down, I knocked over the bowl of flowers. The water ran over the cloth and down onto my legs. The waiter was at the other end of the room and did not see in a second. Oh, it did not see. In a second, though, my neighbour was at my side. You can't sit with a wet tablecloth, he said. You won't enjoy your food. Get out, get out, get out of the way. He began to dry the table with his handkerchief, and then the waiter came hurrying to help. Lay my table for two, he said. This lady will have lunch with me. Hmm. Oh no, I said. I couldn't possibly. Why not? I tried to think of an excuse. I knew he did not want to lunch with me. He was only being polite. Come and sit down. We didn't come and sit down. We didn't talk unless you want to. Unless we want to. He sat down and went on eating his lunch as though nothing had happened. I knew we could go on like this all through the meal without speaking, but without any sense of awkwardness. Your friend, he began at last, she's very much older than you. Have you known her long? She's not really a friend, I told him. She's an employer. She's training me to be a companion, and she pays me. I didn't know one could buy companionship, he said. It sounds a strange idea. You haven't much in common with her. What do you do it for? Haven't you any family? No, they're dead. You know, he said, we've got that in common, you and I. We are both alone in the world. Oh, I've got a sister, though we don't see much of each other. Of a sister, sorry, sister. A sister. I've got a sister, though we don't see much of each other. And an ancient grandmother whom I visit 2 or 3 times a year, but neither of them provides much companionship. Sorry. You know, I think you've made a big mistake in coming here, in joining forces with Mrs. Van Hooper. You're not made for that sort of job. You're too young, for one thing, and too soft. Now go upstairs and put your hat on, and I'll have the car brought round. I was happy that afternoon. I can remember it well. I can see the blue sky and sea. I can feel again the wind on my face and hear my laugh and his hat and his that answered it. It was not the Monte Carlo that I had known before. The harbour was a dancing thing, bright with boats, and the sailors were cheerful, smiling men, careless as the wind. I can remember as though I were still wearing it. My comfortable, badly fitting suit, my broad hat, the shoes I wore. I had never looked more youthful. I had never felt so old. I'm glad it cannot happen twice. The fever of first love. For it is a fever and a misery too. Whatever the poets may say, one is so easily hurt. I have forgotten much of Monte Carlo, of those morning drives, of where we went, even of our conversation. But I have not forgotten how my fingers trembled, pulling on my hat, and how I would run down the stairs and so outside. He would be there in the driver's seat, reading a paper while he waited, and when he saw me, he would smile and throw it behind me and throw it, well, the newspaper, behind me, behind him into the back seat and open the door saying, "Well, how is the companion this morning? And where does she want to go?" If he had driven round in circles, he would not have mattered. It would not have mattered to me. So this is the end of chapter 1, and now we're going to continue with chapter 2. Manderley. We came to Manderley in early May, arriving, so Maxim said, with the birds and the flowers before the start of summer. I can see myself now, badly dressed as usual, although I had been married for 7 weeks. So so the narrator, we don't know her name, and Max de Winter met in Monte Carlo in this hotel, and basically they've been on dates around Monte Carlo, and they got married. So 7 weeks later, so a month, nearly 2 months later, they got back to Manderley in England. I can see myself now, badly dressed as usual, although I had been married for 7 weeks. I wondered if he guessed that I feared my arrival at Manderley now as much as I had looked forward to it before. Gone was my excitement, my happy pride. I was like a child brought to her first school. Any confidence I had gained during my 7 weeks of marriage was gone now. You mustn't mind if there is a certain amount of interest in you, he said. Everyone will want to know what you're like. They have probably talked of nothing else for weeks. You've only got to be yourself, and they will all love you. And you won't have to worry about the house. Mrs. Danvers does everything. Just leave it all to her. She will stiff with you at first, I expect. She's an unusual character, but you mustn't let her worry you. We drove through 2 high iron gates and up the long driveway. We stopped at the wide stone steps at the open door, and 2 servants came down to meet us. "Well, here we are, Frith," said Maxim to the older one, taking off his hat. "And this is Robert," he added, turning towards me. We walked together up the steps, Frith and Robert following with my coat and traveling bag. "This is Mrs. Danvers," said Maxim. Someone came forward from the sea of faces, someone tall and thin, dressed in black, with great dark eyes in a white face. When she took my hand, hers was heavy and deathly cold, and it lay in mine like a lifeless thing. Her eyes never left mine. I cannot remember her words now, but I know she welcomed me to Manderley in a stiff little speech spoken in a voice as cold and lifeless as her hand had been. When she had finished, she waited as though for a reply, and I tried to say something, dropping my hat in my confusion. She bent to pick it up, and as she handed it, To me, I saw a little smile of scorn on her lips. After after tea, Frith came in. Mrs. Danvers wonders, madam, whether you would like to see your room. Maxim looked up. How did they get on with the east wing? He said. Very well, sir. Mrs. Danvers was rather afraid it would not be finished by your return, but the men left last Monday. I think you will be very comfortable, sir. It's a lot lighter, of course, on that side of the house. What have they what have they been doing? I asked. Oh, nothing much. Only redecorating and changing the furniture in the rooms in the east wing, which I thought we would use for ours. As Frith says, it's much more cheerful on that side of the house, and it has a lovely view of the rose garden. It was the visitors' wing when my mother was alive. I just finished reading these letters, and then I'll just finish reading these letters, and then I'll come up and join you. Run along and make friends with Mrs. Danvers. It's a good opportunity. The black figure stood waiting for me at the top of the stairs. Hey, hi, Kitty. Hello, hello. Thank you for joining tonight. So I'm page eight and nine. And I forgot to, never mind. Hi, Dee. Hello. Welcome to the live. So, as I was saying, we are page 8 and 9. So, if you have the book and you want to read along, follow the reading, then these are the pages. So, I'm page 9 now. Okay, so at the top. The black figure stood waiting for me at the top of the stairs, her dark eyes watching me from her pale face. We went along broad passages, then came to a door which she opened, standing back to let me pass. There was the large double bedroom with wide windows and a bathroom on the far side. I went straight to the windows. The rose garden lay below, and beyond it, a smooth grass bank stretching to the woods. You can't see the sea from here, then. You can't see the sea from here, then. I said, turning to Mrs. De Winter, to Mrs. Danvers. No, not from this wing, she answered. You can't even hear it. You wouldn't know the sea was anywhere near from this wing. She spoke in a strange way, as though something lay behind her words, as though there was something wrong with this wing. Hi, Da, welcome to the live. So we are page 9 if you want to follow the reading. I'm sorry about that. I like the sea. She did not answer. She just went on looking at me, her hands folded in front of her. But it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful room, and I'm sure we shall be very comfortable. I understand that it has been redecorated. Yes. What was it like before? There was blue paper on the walls, and there were different curtains. Mr. De Winter did not find it very cheerful. It was never used much, except for occasional visitors. But Mr. De Winter gave special orders in his letter that you were to have this room. Then this was not his bedroom originally? No, ma'am. He's never used the rooms in this wing before. Oh, he didn't tell me that. There was a silence between us. I wished she would go away. I wondered why she had to go on standing there, watching me, her hands folded on her black dress. I suppose you have been at Manderley for many years, I said, making another effort. Longer than anyone else? Not so long as Frith, she said, and I thought again how lifeless her voice was, and how cold. Frith was here when the old gentleman was living, when Mr. de Winter was a boy. I see. So you did not come until after that? No, not until after that. I came here when Mr. de Winter married his first wife, she said, and her voice, which had been dull and flat, was suddenly filled with unexpected life, and there was a spot of colour in her bony face. The change was so sudden that I was disturbed. I did not know what to do or to say. It was as though she had spoken words which were forbidden, words which she had hidden within herself for a long time, and now she would be kept, and now would be kept in no longer. I could see that she scorned me, seeing that I was no great lady, but was ordinary and awkward. Yet there was something beside scorn in those eyes of hers, something surely of positive dislike or actual hatred. I had to say something. I could not let her see how much I feared and mistrusted her. Mrs. Danvers, I heard myself saying, I hope we shall be friends and come to understand one another. You must have patience with me, you know, because this sort of life is new to me. I've lived rather differently, but I do want to make a success of it, and above all, to make Mr. de Winter happy. I know I can leave arrangements in the house to you, and you must just run things as they have always been run. I shan't want to make any changes. I stopped rather breathless, and when I looked up again, I saw that she had moved and was standing with her hand on the handle of the door. Very good, she said. I hope I shall do everything to your satisfaction. The house has been in my charge now for more than a year, and Mr. de Winter has never complained. It was very different, of course, when the first Mrs. de Winter was alive. There were many visitors then, a lot of parties, and though I managed things for her, she liked to give the orders herself. Once again, I felt that she chose her words with care and was watching for the effect on me, on my face. I would rather leave it to you, I repeated, much rather. And into her face came the same expression I had noticed before, when I first shook hands with her in a hall, a look of scorn. I wished she would go. She was like a shadow standing there. If you find anything not to your liking, you will tell me immediately. Yes, I said. Yes, of course, Mrs. Danvers, but I knew this was not what she meant to say. And silence fell between us once again. Dislike you? Why dislike you? What the devil do you mean? He turned from the window, an angry look on his face. I wondered why he should mind, and I wished I had said something. I mean, it must be easy. It must be much easier for her to look after a man alone. I expected she had used to doing it. I expect she had got used to doing it, and perhaps she was afraid I would be difficult. Difficult? My God, he began. If you think... And then he stopped and kissed me on the top of my head. Let's forget about Mrs. Danvers, he said. She doesn't interest me very much. come along and let me show you something of Manderley. So here it seems like Mr. De Winter, Max, came into the room. Maxim de Winter came into the room um, and uh, and was talking. Here in this paragraph, Mr. De Winter is talking uh, to Maxim, um, although it's not very obvious at the beginning. And that's the end of chapter 2. This is it for today. So I hope that you are interested, sorry, in listening more, in reading more of Rebecca. Um, and if you have any questions, of course, any comments um, about the book club or about the reading, or if you want to make any comments about the characters, what's your feeling about the plot, um, then I'm curious to know what you think about. So thank you again for attending the live here on Instagram and for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this live reading. And make sure you subscribe to the book club to attend the first live workshop this Saturday. And I wish you a beautiful end of the day. And I will see you tomorrow for session 2. And we will read chapters 3 and 4. Thank you and see you tomorrow. Bye.